Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechScope News. I'm Tiffani Neilson, and joining me, as always, is my incredible co-host, Johannes Beekman. How are you today, Johannes?
I'm doing great, Tiffany. How's your day going?
Amazing. Thank you for asking. And Johannes, this week felt like the early stages of a system redesign.
That's absolutely right, Tiffany. Even last year, most of the AI conversation was about demos, chatbots, and productivity tools. Now it's showing up in much bigger places: the power grid, labor policy, defense planning, satellites, healthcare, and the infrastructure behind that itself.
And increasingly, the question isn't what can AI do? It's becoming who controls it, who powers it, who regulates it, and what happens when entire industries become dependent on it.
Exactly. And AI is starting to look less than a software feature and much more like infrastructure. Yes.
And today, we're covering governments demanding access to frontier AI systems before release, the escalating compute arms race, warnings about AI stressing the power grid, space-based solar power, constitutional protections against automated decision-making, AI surveillance in the workplace, cybersecurity risks from autonomous agents, medical breakthroughs, and yes, CERN transporting antimatter.
Right, and transporting antimatter is an incredible scientific milestone. It also happens to be the kind of phrase that makes every sci-fi fan instinctively look for the emergency exit.
Exactly. If anyone hears mysterious humming from a basement reactor tonight, call the Ghostbusters first and the venture capitalists second. But let's start with one of the biggest AI stories in the world right now. Major AI companies have agreed to allow US government testing of frontier AI systems before public release. And Johannes, this feels like the wild, wild west of AI.
It does feel like the wild, wild west, but maybe the sheriff is finally showing up, and governments are starting to say right now, we cannot just wait until these systems are released and then figure out what went wrong. They want to understand, and they need to understand the risk before these models are widely available.
And the justification is national security.
Oh, yes, the worries are pretty serious. So cyber attacks, misinformation, autonomous behavior, biological risk, and models doing things that developers did not fully expect once they are used at scale.
And so governments want visibility before these systems hit the public.
But that also creates a real tension. You want oversight, especially with powerful systems, but you also do not want a slow government process trying to manage technology that changes every few months.
And historically, governments are not exactly famous for moving at software speed.
No, not at all. Most regulatory systems were built for a much slower world, and AI does not move at that pace.
But this may become one of the defining governance questions of the decade. Because once governments gain pre-release access to frontier AI systems, the relationships between states and AI companies changes fundamentally.
Very much so. This is one of those moments where AI stops being just a business story and it becomes a national infrastructure and a national security story.
Well, speaking of strategic infrastructure, reports this week suggest Anthropic secured massive AI supercomputer access through infrastructure connected to SpaceX and xAI. And you'll notice this story says something important about where AI competition is heading.
It does. The AI race is no longer just about who has the best model or the smartest engineers. It's also about who has the machines, the chips, the power, and the money to keep scaling.
Meaning whoever controls compute, energy, cloud infrastructure, networking, and specialized chips may control the future of AI itself.
Exactly. Frontier AI systems now takes an enormous amount of infrastructure, and it's not just a few smart people in a room anymore building software. It's data centers, energy contracts, cooling, networking chips, and billions of dollars.
And this is also where Elon Musk's ecosystem strategy becomes interesting, because there are reports that XAI operations are becoming increasingly intertwined with SpaceX infrastructure and compute expansion efforts.
And that is why vertical integration starts to make sense. If compute is scarce and expensive, companies want more control over the whole stack.
And this also changes the economics of competition, because smaller firms may simply struggle to access enough infrastructure to compete in the frontier.
And that is one of those big shifts. Talent still matters, of course, but talent alone is not enough if you cannot get access to the compute part.
So AI is becoming less like a startup ecosystem and more like heavy industry.
Exactly. And once the industry starts looking like heavy infrastructure, you usually see consolidation. The smaller players have a much harder time keeping up.
And one of the most important stories this week came from energy analysts, warning that the AI boom could significantly strain electrical grids worldwide. And honestly, Johannes, this may be the part of the AI story that the public still underestimates the most. Meaning every AI query, image generation, workflow, or autonomous agent action consumes compute continuously.
Exactly. Training large models takes a lot of energy, but running them every day at global scale may become an even bigger issue. Every query, every generated image, every automated workflow has a cost somewhere.
And so eventually, the AI race becomes constrained by energy production itself.
That is becoming a real possibility. At some point, the question is not just, can we build a model? It is, can the grid support the demand?
Which changes the conversation dramatically, because suddenly AI isn't just competing for users or chips, it's competing for electricity.
And it's not only electricity, Tiffany. It's transmission lines, cooling systems, land, water, permits, and local politics. That is where AI becomes very physical.
And politically sensitive infrastructure, because communities will increasingly ask who benefits from these facilities, who absorbs the costs, and how much energy should AI consume relative to everything else.
And once a technology starts affecting grid planning and local energy decisions, it's no longer just software.
Which brings us to one of the most futuristic stories of the week. A company called Overview Energy announced plans to explore space-based solar power systems intended to support Meta's future data center energy needs. Johannes, are we actually talking about orbital solar infrastructure now?
Potentially, yes. The basic idea is to collect solar energy in orbit where sunlight is much more consistent and then send that energy back to Earth.
This honestly sounds like a rejected subplot from some 1980s sci-fi movie.
It does. I agree with you. It sounds like science fiction. But the reason people keep coming back to the idea is that solar power in space does not have the same day, night, and weather problems we have here on the ground.
So the AI energy problem is becoming large enough that companies are revisiting ideas once considered economically unrealistic.
Well, when energy demand becomes extreme enough, ideas that once seemed unrealistic start getting another look.
And whether this specific approach succeeds or not, the bigger message is unmistakable. Energy innovation is becoming inseparable from AI expansion. And Amazon Web Services and Meta announced expanded global collaboration around AWS Graviton chips and AI infrastructure optimization, which sounds technical, but this is actually one of the biggest strategic battles in technology right now.
And very much so. A lot of people focus on the models, but the economics underneath matter just as much. How expensive is each AI response? How efficient are the chips? How much does it cost to run these systems at scale?
Because compute is becoming one of the largest operating costs in the industry.
Yes, building a powerful model is one thing, running it profitably for millions or billions of users is a completely different challenge.
And custom silicon matters strategically because companies don't want total dependence on a single hardware supplier.
Especially while demand for GPUs is still very intense, everyone wants more compute, and no one wants to be completely dependent on one single supplier.
So beneath the AI race is another race. Who controls the infrastructure stack?
Absolutely. Chips, cloud platforms, networking, cooling, power contracts, it all matters now. The AI story is really becoming an infrastructure story.
Thanks, Johannes. And one of the biggest business shifts happening quietly right now is the rise of AI agents inside enterprise workflows. Not just chatbots answering questions, but systems taking actions.
Exactly. We are moving away from AI that gives suggestions to AI that can actually do things.
Meaning the systems capable of retrieving information, updating systems, executing workflows, coordinating tasks, and increasingly making operational decisions.
And that changes enterprise software in a big way. Instead of clicking through dashboards and menus, people may increasingly tell the system what they want done, and the agent handles the steps.
Which sounds efficient until an AI accidentally emails your CFO, updates your CRM, and schedules 12 meetings in Singapore.
That's what's in technology called a very exciting way to create 12 new problems.
And this is why governance and permission becomes critical, because autonomous systems amplify both productivity and mistakes.
And yes, once AI can take action, permissions become the whole ballgame. The question is not just, is the AI smart? It is smart. But the question becomes, what is it allowed to touch?
Thanks, Johannes. And one of the most important governance stories this week came out of Greece. The country is proposing constitutional protections requiring meaningful human oversight over AI-driven decisions affecting citizens. And Johannes, this feels bigger than a national policy debate.
Oh, it is bigger, Tiffany. When something reaches the level of constitutional language, the country is saying this is not just a tech issue anymore. This affects people's basic rights.
And the core concern here is delegation, not whether AI can assist decisions, but whether societies become too comfortable allowing systems to make consequential judgments about people.
So yes, hiring, credit, healthcare, government services, law enforcement, these are all areas where a decision can seriously affect someone. And once automation is in place, there's always pressure to move faster and let the system handle more.
And history suggests that institutions love efficiency.
Very much so. And that's why safeguards have to come early. Once these systems are deeply embedded, they become much harder to unwind and control.
And Meta is facing scrutiny in Europe over AI-driven workplace surveillance systems reportedly monitoring employee productivity and behavior. And Johannes, this is where AI starts feeling very personal.
It does, Tiffany. This is where AI stops feeling abstract. If AI is watching how fast you work, how often you pause, what you click, and how your behavior compares to everyone else's, that changes the workplace.
Which sounds efficient until you imagine existing inside it every day.
Exactly, Tiffany. A human manager can only observe so much. AI systems can monitor constantly, score constantly, and create pressure constantly.
And Europe tends to move earlier than the US on digital rights and labor protections.
Very much so. European regulators tend to ask earlier whether workers can really consent to this kind of monitoring, when saying no may not be realistic.
Which means the deeper issue here isn't the software itself, it's what kind of workplace culture AI incentivizes. And another major trend this week, cybersecurity experts are warning that AI agents dramatically expand the attack surface for both defenders and attackers.
And because agents can take access now, they're not just generating text. The traditional cybersecurity efforts are not working anymore.
Meaning systems can retrieve files, execute workflows, trigger tools, modify settings, and interact autonomously.
Exactly, Tiffany. And that makes the security problem much bigger than it already is. You're not only protecting data from people, you're also managing what automated systems are allowed to do with the data.
And cybersecurity starts looking less like perimeter defense and more like runtime governance.
And that's a good way to put it. The big question becomes, what can the agent access? What can they change? When does it need approval? And how do you catch a bad action before it spreads?
Which sounds increasingly like managing digital employees.
Honestly, yes, it does. So my take is that managing AI agents is like managing digital employees with permissions, supervision, and consequences when something goes wrong.
And let's shift to a more hopeful story. Researchers at the Mayo Clinic reported AI systems identifying pancreatic cancer significantly earlier than traditional diagnostic timelines in some cases. And Johannes, this is where AI feels genuinely transformative.
It does, Tiffany. Healthcare is one of the areas where AI can generally be useful because it can find patterns across huge amounts of data that a human doctor may not be able to see on the road.
And pancreatic cancer is particularly important because early detection is notoriously difficult.
Yes, and because of that, pancreatic cancer is often found late. And if an AI can help doctors catch signals earlier, that could make a real difference.
I also think that stories like this help rebalance the public conversation because amid all the infrastructure races and governance fears, it's important to remember why societies are investing in these technologies in the first place.
That's right. At its best, AI should expand what humans can do. It should support doctors, not replace judgment.
And finally, one of the most fascinating science stories of the month. CERN announced researchers successfully transported antimatter outside a laboratory environment for the first time using a mobile containment system. Johannes, this immediately reminded me of Ghostbusters. Because at some point in every antimatter story, I expect someone to yell, "Do not cross the streams."
That is a very reasonable safety policy in this case, Tiffany.
Exactly. If there's glowing plasma in a portable container, I want at least one scientist dramatically sweating.
Preferably several scientists. But yes, scientifically, this is a big deal. Antimatter cannot just be put in a box and carried across town. If it touches ordinary matter, it annihilates. So moving it safely is extremely difficult.
And the importance here is capability, because once you can transport antimatter, experimentation becomes far more flexible.
So yes, if research can transport antimatter safely, they can run experiments in more places and under better conditions. And that could help with questions about gravity, particle physics, and why the universe is made mostly of matter instead of antimatter.
Which remains one of the most incredible things about science. Humanity still fundamentally does not fully understand why the universe exists in its current form.
And yet somehow we have decided, let's make antimatter portable. Only humans would look at one of the universe's biggest mysteries and ask, can we put it in a truck?
Exactly, Johannes. So if there's one theme connecting today's episode, it's this. AI and emerging technology are no longer operating at the edges of society. They are moving deeper into the center of infrastructure, governance, energy, labor, medicine, and daily life.
And once technology reaches that level, the questions get much more bigger than the products. Who controls it? Who benefits? Who carries the risk? And how resilient are those systems if something goes wrong?
Which means the next phase of innovation may not simply be about building smarter systems. It may be about building systems humanity can actually live with.
Preferably without installing antimatter containment units in the office break room.
That would definitely improve workplace morale. And if these are the kinds of conversations shaping your organization, industry, or strategy, we'd love to continue them with you at the upcoming Intelligent Thinking AI Summit 2026. Industry leaders, experts, and innovators will be joining us to explore the future of AI infrastructure, governance, enterprise adoption, and emerging technology. For speaking, sponsorships, or just to register, you can visit www.iotmktg.com.
Thanks for joining us on TechScope News.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, Johannes. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Tiffani.
Thank you. Bye-bye.